What's up guys, it's Matthew here. Just got off a long day at work and finished my workout today, so I'm a little bit tired, but there's something I want to talk about today that's been on my mind lately. Today I want to talk about the state of the fitness industry, and not from any kind of social or economic standpoint, but from a spiritual one. The fitness industry is very interesting because it's one of those that's a product of our modern times. Industrial revolution and its consequences, right? When I talk about the fitness industry in this video, what I'm referring to is the economic profit-driven systems that surround the concept of physical fitness, or rather the sports that are created around physical fitness. I would hope that's obvious, but I have to make dumb disclaimers like that because it's the internet. Humanity has always admired powerful individuals. That's always been true since ancient times and even before ancient times, right? Just think of examples like Achilles for the pagans and let's say Samson for a biblical example. But what I'm talking about here is modern sports like bodybuilding, powerlifting, CrossFit, and the industries that surround these sports like the supplement and nutritional industries, the workout gear industry, etc. The fitness industry in our modern world is yet another example of the spiritual degradation of our society and how we've totally abandoned temperance and restraint in order to push the mold in the extremes and excesses that we see today. Focusing on the most obvious, I'm going to be talking about professional bodybuilding, a sport that is built entirely on the pursuit of vanity. Now, powerlifting and CrossFit are not exempt from this discussion, but for the purposes of today, we're just going to talk about bodybuilding. I'm really tired. I don't have a lot of time or energy to talk about all of that, and this video would be way too long. So we're just going to talk about bodybuilding for now. Now, bodybuilding quite literally is a sport for dudes and ladies to spend almost every waking moment of their lives in the pursuit of vanity. And the reason being quite obvious is because their entire sport is centered on their physical appearance, of looking a certain way. And of course, in competition, they all stand up on stage in a little tight ass thong, greased up like a pig for a panel of judges, right? I mean, there's no other way to put it. That is the sport. No homo, right? Of course, women compete in bodybuilding as well, but I'm going to be focusing on men for the purposes of this discussion. Now, in order to achieve this very specific appearance that has been selected over time, the professional bodybuilder has to participate in all kinds of gluttony in order to achieve that specific look. Now, the most obvious gluttony, of course, is food, but first I want to get a different discussion out of the way, and that's the gluttony of steroid use. Now, finally, people are starting to catch on and admit the prevalence of steroid abuse in the bodybuilding world. And my experience in the past decades is that most people don't want to admit that there is so much steroid abuse that goes on in these sports. You know, for whatever reason, they admire these athletes and they look up to them, or they don't want to admit that it's unattainable to achieve the physiques that they have naturally because they themselves want to achieve those physiques without using steroids. Whatever the reason being, there's a fleet of people that would come to the defense of any accusation of steroid use in almost any famous pro bodybuilder. Now, I think because of the rise of social media, there's more and more examples of athletes that have either been exposed for steroid use or they themselves have come out and admitted to their steroid abuse. Now we have more and more examples, so people are finally starting to realize that and are finally admitting what they denied for so long. For the most part, most pro bodybuilders at the elite level are abusing PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. You have to compete at that level. Now, I don't care about all the drug testing they do. I don't care about all the competition rules. I understand that, but most cheaters are going to find ways around the rules and around the drug tests in order to compete. Where there's a will, there's a way, and cheaters will always find a way. So for those that participate and are not cheating, they become now at a disadvantage and are encouraged, or rather even forced, to cheat in order to stay competitive themselves. So then it becomes this cycle of a feedback loop that encourages these athletes to abuse steroids to greater and greater levels. And that's why steroid abuse has become so rampant in these circles. Now, the gluttonous use of steroids has resulted in these athletes just becoming unnaturally large, with physiques that are impossible for the average natural man to achieve. The best way to truly recognize this is just to Google the old classic bodybuilders of the early 20th century, even as early as the 60s or as late as the 60s. a lot of them look very, very normal, they have very obtainable physiques, very natural looking physiques, not hypervascular, you can't see every individual sinew in their body. They still have some measure of fat on their body. And then compare them with Mr. Olympias of recent decades who look like absolute freaks of nature. You can see the clear difference of what looks natural and what is unnatural. That's obviously the abuse of drugs. Now, in order to maintain that unnaturally large size, you're gonna have to eat an excessive amount. Okay, let's say, for example, you have a 220-pound adult male pro bodybuilder. They eat probably around 3,000 to 6,000 calories a day, plus or minus, depending on the season. And let's say also, for an average comparison, you have a 160-pound adult male who's an average dude, average Joe Schmo. He probably needs around 2,000 calories a day to maintain that size, plus or minus. When speaking in averages then, if a pro bodybuilder consumes that many calories, he's consuming almost twice as many resources as an average person. And it's all for the purpose of achieving a specific look. Now, this always blew my mind because when you have a fat ass that eats that amount, most people will find it disgusting. But when it's a steroid abusing, muscly bodybuilder, it's praised and lauded. Both are excessive and unhealthy. Now, something that always comes to mind, I'll never forget, was a interview with Ronnie Coleman on him balancing bodybuilding with his full-time job as a police officer. Now, he was talking to the interviewer as he was getting out of his uniform, he's unbuttoning his shirt, and this guy was having to take a breath between every second word. And you could tell that even just taking his shirt off was exhausting. The man is so unnaturally large that his organs are struggling just to exist. I mean, this cannot be seen as healthy. This is gluttony to the extreme, and it's praised. I see it praised all the time. Now, we can see the gluttony is self-evident. Let's talk about vanity and pride. Now, I'm going to expand the category of discussion to not just bodybuilders, but physique athletes in general. So the aim of the physique athlete is to maintain a certain appearance. The use of PEDs work towards this visual goal. But what about aspects of your appearance that PEDs can't help with? That's where plastic surgery comes into play. It's not uncommon for physique athletes to also abuse plastic surgery in order to achieve a certain look. Liposuction for spot fat reduction is a pretty obvious one. So abdominoplasty or tummy tuck is also very common. Removing excess skin from your lower abdominal, which is a very common occurrence, especially if you're going through bulking and cutting cycles, especially to the extreme that bodybuilders do. Or if you're a female physique athlete and you've recently had a baby and you have excess skin around that area, tummy tucks are also a common solution to that. Rhinoplasty or nose job is also very common in physique athletes. Botox to remove wrinkles, fillers in the lips, in the cheekbones, anything you name it to achieve a certain look visually to appeal to judges while on stage. And the abuse of plastic surgery falls under the gluttonous category just as much as steroid abuse and food abuse. So now you have physique competitors with fake bodies due to drug abuse and plastic surgery abuse. Now they're able to get a direct connection to fans in a much wider, broader audience than just fans of the particular sport. And these athletes who don't want their achievements to be minimized or disregarded, or in the case that they participate in sports where PEDs or steroids are not allowed per competition rules, they'll pretend on social media that they're natty, right? And the regular schmucks who follow these people are most likely going to fall for it. I mean, let's just be real here. Most people do fall for it. And I think one of the biggest reasons they do is because the whole reason they're a fan of that particular athlete is because they have a physique that the fan wants to achieve ultimately someday, right? They look up to their physique as a goal for themselves. And that makes it so easy for that athlete to sell them on supplements they don't need, sell them on workout and diet plans that may be helpful to some degree, but are not necessary for the person. And the fan is going to buy into that because in their mind, they're thinking, I want to look like this person. And if I'm buying the supplements that they're selling, if I'm buying the programs that they're selling, if I'm doing the things that they claim they did in order to get where they are, then I will also look like that. So these physique competitors will use their fake bodies to sell online. They'll sell unnecessary supplements. They'll sell generic workout routines and generic diet plans. And they'll sell them to the average person who's rampant with insecurities, who have the hope that one day they can overcome those insecurities if only they'd, took the supplements that they took and worked out the way that they work out and ate the way that they ate. Without taking into account that they have no idea what happened behind the scenes. They don't know this person's genetics. They don't know what kind of drugs that they abuse. They don't know what kind of plastic surgery they've had. So it's just a really effed up system. I mean, it really is. Man, and I haven't even touched on the lust and sexual indecency aspect of the industry. And you have men and women that are wearing absolutely nothing on stage, greased up so that you can see every nook and cranny of their body, literally for all of us to gawk and admire and awe at. I mean, the lust aspect of it is pretty obvious, so I'm not gonna really talk about that. Plus, this video is getting way too long and I'm getting too tired. But I just want to point out the sins of the fitness industry so that you can see how gluttonous and vain and prideful and lustful it all is. Of course, another disclaimer, I'm not knocking bodybuilding or fitness training or anything like that, obviously. It's a good thing to work on your body, to strengthen your body, men and women, but especially men, in order to be protectors, right? We're not just providers, but we're also protectors. And so you can't be a wet noodle of a man with no strength or ability to exert your will on the world around you. I just want to point out how as a industry and how as a society we've kind of let ourselves slip into excess and abandon all concepts of temperance and restraint. Now for us average folk who train in the gym, outside of sports, even those that do train inside of sports, I hope this is a kind of reminder to rein it in and to always act with temperance. This is a virtue, a Christian virtue, to act in a way that we don't give into excess, we don't give into the temptation of gluttony, because gluttony is much more than just eating too much food. Gluttony, at the end of the day, is simply taking things too far. All right, that's it for me today. See you in the next video.